Hello and welcome to another edition of the Knicks Film School Pregame Show. My name is Andrew Claudio, aka GMAC, and it's time for another preview of the Knicks' upcoming matchup on Tuesday night against the New Orleans Pelicans, who come in at 34-24 on the season, a very comparable record to what the Knicks have on the year, and have gotten there a very different way than the Knicks have. So we'll talk all about it and preview it in just a second. I should mention we're recording this during the Pistons game, so I don't know the outcome. I am hoping that it is what I would like it to be, but obviously you will know by now what happened in the Pistons game, so we'll see. But joining me to preview this matchup on Tuesday night at the Garden against the Pelicans, from Boot Crew Media, he runs their Pelican Spaces, Mr. Chris Connor. Chris, welcome to the Knicks Film School Podcast, sir.
Pleasure to be here, man. Appreciate the invite.
Of course. Thank you for joining me. And I hinted at it in the intro, this Pelicans team that is 34-24. Every single time I do an advanced stats check, I look at net rating and see like where the Knicks are, and they're hovering around 6 or 7. At one point they got to 5. And I'm just like, the Pelicans are right there too. Like this Pelicans team that seems to go under the radar. There's nobody in the awards considerations. Zion and CJ and Brandon Ingram, none of them are really considered for all-star conversations. And yet they're just sitting there with a decent record in the mix with Dallas and Sacramento and all these other teams that get talked about a ton. And they're just a top 7 team, according to net rating. If I can ask you about the vibes in New Orleans earlier in the season, the Knicks haven't played the Pelicans since the third game of the year. So a lot's changed, but you know, how are fans in New Orleans feeling about this Pelicans team?
I think it's somewhat of a mixed bag. You know, you have and I'm sure it's relative to what we'll talk about as the show goes on about expectations. And I think, it's really all about for, pretty much all the fan base, it comes down to what your expectations were of this team. I think one of the things that's making people, I would say, excited or positive is the fact that they've had relatively good health. While CJ just sprained his ankle, he just went through a full practice, so he's actually questionable for tomorrow's game. But the main guys that this whole season has been drawn around are. It's been Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson, and the question mark has been about their health. And they've both been relatively healthy, even with Brandon Ingram missing, 2 games after the All-Star break, or it may have been 3, but I think it was 2. Yeah, 2 after the All-Star break. It's still one of his most, he's on track to play the most games that he's played as a New Orleans Pelican. Similar, the same thing can be said for Zion. No real missed games due to injury. I think he's had 1 or 2 and he's questionable, but it's been more of a maintenance thing. He's been questionable for about the past 10 to 15 games at this point. So the health of those 2 guys has been one of the things that I think have people in good standing. And look, 10 games over 500, it's good, it's solid, but you wonder, and I'm sure that you can kind of relate to this, is once you are in a playoff setting, once you are back in playing in those kind of games, even though the Pelicans have had some success against some top teams, including a few nice wins, what is this team's ceiling? And they also have a few things that are, a few question marks that they are going to have to address in the offseason. So I would say a mixed bag, but I would say more good than bad.
So you speak to the health of this team and specifically the big 3. And I'll start with CJ. For those Knicks fans that don't know, CJ's played in 43 of 58 games. So he's only missed 50. I say only, but like compared to the past when you might only play 43 games for a Pelicans team, there's guys on the team that are like that, which is what brings me to Zion, who's played 47 of 58 games. And like, if he gets to 60, I wonder if that's a bit of an accomplishment. And to your point about Brandon Ingram, 52 of 58 games so far played this season. So, but my next question is, you hinted at the expectations for this year. Going into it, was it like, if we could just see one season of what these guys are healthy, that like I'll settle for whatever happens in the playoffs? Or was there any postseason expectations put on this year if you got any modicum of health?
Yeah. And Andrew is weird, because I would say that the people outside New Orleans have a different view than, say, folks that are inside the city or that follow the team and that are connected to the city.
And Chris, that's why we do this pregame podcast. I want you to tell me what's inside. So tell me what's up.
And look, and it's kind of the opposite. I've been making content or writing about the team, talking about the team, and a fan of the franchise. Overall, since they arrived in New Orleans in 2003, I think at this point. So what I would say I'm used to is I would used to the city and the region, people that follow the team, feeling a certain type of positivity or certain kind of, maybe feeling like you're not being talked, they're not being talked about enough. They're being miscasted in a way, or there's just people that don't watch enough games. Well, now it's kind of like the opposite. I would argue people on the national media side, or people that don't, that watch a game every now and then, they look at the Pelicans and say, man, if they stay healthy, they're a scary team, a team that can make the Western Conference Finals. And now I think for people in the city, while there are some folks that believe this team can get to a Western Conference Finals, there are folks that believe that they can win a series. I think there's still a lot of question marks because so much of it is around Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson, right? We talked about health, and I don't want to ignore CJ McCollum, but this team years ago, it became real. 5 years ago, you saw early when Brandon Ingram was on the way to being an all-star that it felt like, and then shortly after that with Lonzo Ball moving on to the Bulls, everything was going to be built around Brandon and Zion, but you never really got to see it fitted. And then when you did see them on the floor together, there seems to still be something missing in regards to seeing them being a dynamic duo, a duo that can play together and dominate games. You might look at a box score and you might see Brandon has 25, or Zion has 25, and the other may have a bunch of assists, or they've had games where I think this season have both scored 30, but a lot of times it's exclusive or it's with the other one out of the game, and we see it so often. Once you get in these playoff series, you got to be able, your duo not only has to be able to dominate, they're playing 36, 37, 38 minutes, sometimes 40 minutes a night. You need them to be able to do it together. And I don't think we've seen enough to know exactly if they can do it. If they can, great. But it's just, you really don't know. You could say, I could see this team losing in the first round, 6 games, 7 games. I can also see them winning a series. I can see them with the right matchups, the right cards being dealt, being in a Western Conference Finals. You don't know. But if you listen to people on the outside, they're a lot less critical. And I'm not used to that. I'm used to defending the Pelicans and telling, and saying these folks don't watch they don't watch the Pelicans. They don't know what's going on. No, people are complimentary of Willie Green and complimentary of David Griffin and complimentary of what could be with the roster and the depth. I think it's a little bit different when you kind of close in the lens a little bit. You watch every game and you talk to people that are watching every game in the city.
So I'll jump ahead on the rundown because I asked you about I told you I was going to ask you about what a disappointing season looks like. And
yeah,
I'll just say from my outsider's perspective, they avoid the play-in, like say they're the 6th seed, go out in 6 games, 5 even, to the Clippers, right? Who are championship contenders. And I would personally say better than the Pelicans.
Yeah.
But you got like a full season out of Zion. You get like 6 playoff games. You get to see what this looks like. Like that's a good season to me. Now, if I were to, I'm obviously talking to a Pelicans fan right now, and you have the pulse from the more of Pelicans fans than I do. Is that what a disappointing season looks like for the Pelicans fans, or if you could tell me, what does a disappointing season look like?
It's really subjective, man. I mean, I think that there's a little bit of a divide, which I'm sure you can relate to following the different level of Knicks fans. I mean, I think a lot of people forget that this is the fifth year of Zion, right? This is the 5th year of Brandon Ingram being in New Orleans, the 5th year of the David Griffin regime, and the 3rd year of Willie Green. And last season felt like, I think a success, a lot of people would say coming in is not making the play-in, right? Finishing in the top 6 and having an opportunity there and winning a playoff series. I think a lot of people would say that that's a success. But that felt like the goal last season after they take Phoenix Suns to 6 games,
right?
Get back Zion. He's off to a really good start. You're at the top, or you're in the running before the new year, and being one of the better teams in the Western Conference, and then things break down. But even before then, the conversation was how does Zion fit into that team that were one game away from having a Game 7 in Phoenix, and then things break down. Brandon misses games. Zion misses games. CJ gets hurt. It just, Herb Jones has some early struggles offensively, and you end up back in the play-in. You lose to Oklahoma City, and you're doing it all over again. So this season's a little different because you have a pending extension to look at for Brandon Ingram, when you may have to pay him $50 million. Is that something that you want to? Are you able to fully commit in that and trust that? All right, well, you're paying Zion Williamson this amount. You still have CJ McCollum on the books. You're going to pay Brandon Ingram this amount. You have an option. You have a situation with Jonas Valanciunas that you didn't make a move on. What's going to happen there? You're going to have a pending extension available for Trey Murphy. You just pay Herb Jones, and they still have other holes that kind of have been overdue, that have been lingering for a little bit. True backup center, maybe another, maybe a point guard or so. It's tough unless you think this team can really be competitive and go to another level, not lose a game like they did last night against the Bulls, in which they should have put them away. Finishing games, not just hanging around, and winning games against bad matchups or keeping them competitive. It's just, it's tough. You really don't know some nights which Pelicans team you're going to get, even though they haven't really had a point of the season where they just fell off the map. It was a 10-game losing streak last season. You haven't had. They may lose 2, but then you picture them to win the next. They'll win 4. They can't win 5 straight for whatever reason. They'll win 4, lose, then win 3 again, such and such. I just think you want to see if there's another level of dominance to see from this team. And then you could be saying, all right, well, you don't care who they play in the playoffs because you give them an opportunity, like you would say. I think about some of the other teams that have superstar talents, or star talents night to night in the Western Conference.
So can I ask you like a personal question as a fan?
Go ahead.
Do you believe they have another level they can get to? Do you believe that they have second round, I don't want to say abilities, because I think with the right matchup, with the right injury, anybody can make the second round. But how confident are you in a second round appearance by the Pelicans?
I mean, to me, Andrew, is really matchup based. I think if what I've been saying, for a while now, if they get anybody in the first round that isn't Denver or Phoenix, I think that they can get out the first round.
Like, you think they can beat the Clippers?
I think that they can beat. I go back and forth on that, but I think they can. One day I'll tell you that the Clippers will win. The next day I'll tell you, that I think the Pelicans have a shot. They beat the Clippers twice in the regular season, but my worry is, the Clippers have also found a way to be healthy, and in a series, Ty Lue, 7 games, it's tough to bet against that, I would say. But I think against the Clippers, what's interesting roster base is that in the games that the Pelicans have played against the Clippers, there hasn't been an answer for, there's not a matchup for Zion. A lot of other teams have someone that they can throw out there to give him trouble, or so on and so forth. The Clippers in the matchup, in the games the Pelicans have played, and we know the playoff series can be totally different than what a team shows and throws at you. But I'd be really curious to see how they end up, combating with that, because they've had trouble. They don't know if they're throwing Plumlee out there. They don't know if they're, Zubac isn't the answer. You got, PJ Tucker was playing in the first game that they ended up playing. I don't know if the Clippers have a matchup. They tried to go zone. They tried different things. And when Zion was on, it was just something that they really just couldn't combat with. And I don't know if there's some other teams that I feel like have other other options to deter him a little bit in a certain shape or stage. I at least give them an opportunity for that series to go 7. When it comes to the Suns and Denver, I just think that's just really just a bad matchups for the Pelicans, and they're not alone in that category.
So I have to then follow up because Minnesota and OKC have been going back and forth for the 1 seed all year. So you would be confident in a series against either team.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah. I think matchup. I mean, again, it's all about matchups. Like you know how this goes. I mean, it's all about matchups. I mean, I think that's just. I think the Pelicans match up better with Minnesota and with Oklahoma City. I think that they have certain elements that can neutralize the things that make those teams great. Clippers are. The reason I'm on the fence about the Clippers, because some nights it just really just comes down to you just got to pray that Paul George misses shots, or you got to pray that certain guys, because you can't stop everybody. You don't have an option for each guy. They just have too many people that can beat you on ball most nights. Right. You have to hope that certain guys have off nights. I think for when you're talking about the Thunder, you're talking about the Timberwolves, the Pelicans have had some success against those teams in those matchups, but I think the way that they're built, it just gives them a stronger opportunity. And those are also, both teams, Minnesota, Oklahoma City, they have at the head of their table are young talents that have to show that they can win series as well. You're talking about Anthony Edwards, who still has to prove that while he has some experience, can he end up winning a series? I don't believe that he's won one as of yet. I think the last 2 seasons going back, I think he lost both to Minnesota. I mean to Memphis and I think Denver.
And last year,
yeah, and the same with the Thunder. I mean, so I think the Pelicans and the Thunder and the Timberwolves, they're all in the same boat. Regular season basketball is one option, versus what the postseason could look like. So I give them a better opportunity for matchup and just overall experience. Anybody can win those series. I think you pit that group of teams together.
I think I agree with you on that last point specifically, that there's a regular season version of these teams that I'm confident I have an idea of how good they are, but I just don't know what the ceiling is in the playoffs yet. Like Minnesota could be the 1 seed, and I have no idea if it's them against Luka in a first round, if the Warriors get to 8, if the Lakers get to 8. Like, am I picking either of those teams to
Golden State?
Right, the Warriors, exactly. Yeah, like I'm at the point where I have no idea what to factor in with the youth in OKC, if whether like they're a team that's like a year away from being the team that we think they should be. So I agree with you on that. I guess my follow up then about it's going to go back to expectation. It's more of a fallout question then. So first of all, do you think the front office shares your sentiment that like this team should make the second round? And if they don't, like, let's paint the picture that like they lose, they get the 6 seed, they lose in 6 to the Clippers. What happens this offseason in your mind? That's
the thing. I think that the front office is with the mindset. I think they believe that they're capable. Like I wouldn't be shocked at a bunch of different scenarios. If the Pelicans won their first round, wouldn't be shocked. If they lost in 5 games, wouldn't shock me. If they end up falling, or as they currently are slated, back in the play-in, if they get matched up with Golden State and Los Angeles in back-to-back games or something like that, I could see them losing. There's a bunch of different scenarios, and some of it isn't. Some of it has to do with just simply how tough the Western Conference is. But when you look at the roster, going back to the end of last year, there was a lot of betting on internal growth, and certain guys have been able to do it. Herb Jones has been spectacular. Absolutely shooting 41% from 3. We know what he can do defensively, but he's become more than a role player for this team. Jonas Valanciunas is playing very well. Trey Murphy has been kind of disappointing, but some of that is injury related. But there's been other guys, Dyson Daniels, Jose Alvarado, just homegrown guys, for the most part, Najee Marshall, that they've been reliant on, and drafting Jordan Hawkins, that it's kind of it's impeded their ability, for, like I mentioned earlier, true backup center. There were a few guys that are New York Knicks that I was like, man, make the call. break, it just, but it never materialized. So, I mean, to me, I think that a lot of this season was about, okay, Brandon, okay, Zion, it's on you. It's time for you two to figure it out. They didn't make a bunch of changes. And then I think around the deadline, they were serious about upgrading once the Pelicans were in the spot that they were, 12 or 11 games over 500. I think if they end up losing in the first round, that would probably be enough for a team, for a safe organization. I think where the Pelicans are right now, they have a pattern at this point of being safe. That may be enough for them to say, we're going to go ahead with an extension. We're going to go ahead and quote unquote run it back with certain guys. But now we'll be serious about throwing some extra assets out there and going to get whatever that final piece is, an upgrade here, an upgrade there. Because they seem to believe in they seem to want something that's stable, something that's consistent. I just don't know. I don't know where the ceiling is for that and what the long-term goal is and how it plays out. Because, I mean, we've seen it time and time again. If you don't have a guy that's playing like a top 5 dude in the NBA or a top 10 dude in the NBA, you're not going to win many playoff games. You're not going to win many playoff series. So, but yeah, I mean, I think the only way at this point something drastic happens, whether it's popular or not, is if they completely fall flat on their faces and don't make the playoffs, whether that be through them going back into the play-in and losing again, or them just somehow falling, which I think is completely unlikely, but falling off and not even being able to make the play-in. I think that's when you would see something drastic.
That was going to be my follow-up question, my last question on like their ceiling. Because I guess not even their ceiling, but like the outcome of the season. And it's like, I asked you about what is a disappointment and what might happen if, like, in my opinion, one of the best case scenario options, right?
Yeah.
If the worst case scenario happens, like let's say they're the 7-8, they lose the 7-8 to Golden State. Golden State gets a 7. Then they lose the 8-9 to the Lakers, and they're a lottery team. Is that a nuclear button time? Like, do you foresee that there is an option for the way this season could go that would make a nuclear button where it's like, all right, we don't want to give Ingram an extension. Zion's available this offseason. Like, is there anything like I mean, it may be crazy to suggest that, but I'm outside looking in. Like, is there any hint of a chance that they could blow it up if this ends in a missing the playoff scenario?
Well, I mean, look, I mean, there's been, I think during the All-Star break, there was a Ringer report and another report that was saying that the Pelicans are going to have to make a decision between Zion and Brandon in the offseason. And that was with the team, feeling pretty good, 7 of 8, going into the All-Star break. So I think that question, regardless, has been there in regards to them having to make a decision there. I think the most likely, candidate, if they have to choose between Zion and Brandon, of course, will be Brandon, especially with Zion having, either having just a really lucky, healthy season, or changing some things strictly in preparation, professional based, that is helping him, stay on the floor longer. I don't know necessarily about his diet left or right, but I do know that he has made some changes in regards to how he prepares for games, how he rests for games, his treatment, his sleep patterns. Some of those things seem to be, his practice habits. All of those things has improved. So maybe they say okay, now we'll completely build this thing around you, Zion, and we're not afraid of a complete drop off. We'll add some other pieces next. We'll move off of Brandon Ingram, and hey, you're gonna have to pay Trey Murphy, some big money. Maybe he's at that point, you're putting him in the starting lineup. Herb Jones has been spectacular. Maybe you go that route. CJ McCollum has been fine. Maybe you look to upgrade at another position and try to improve that way. Because I think at the end of the day, Andrew, it is all about Zion. No matter what, while Brandon Ingram has played well, Zion's a generational talent. So one way or another, whether you bring Brandon Ingram back and you give him an extension, or you decide to move forward, or you decide to move other pieces and parts, the destiny of this team, their ceiling, how far they can truthfully go, until proven otherwise, man, it really looks to be all on Zion's shoulders. And it's what his truthful ceiling is at this stage as a player in this league and when it comes to dominating. And if you can really get a glimpse of that, then that might make everything easier. And not just from who fits next to him, but what you're willing to accept in the process. If he adds to his game, well, maybe it makes it easier for him and Brandon to play together. Maybe there's another area or another step that Brandon even can take forward. But all of the pressure, all of the gravity and everything, I think that makes this team a matchup nightmare. Since the moment Zion Williamson has been drafted, it's been pointed at him.
You know, it makes sense that like your best player, it's all going to fall on him in the fact that, you know, like it obviously all falls on Jalen Brunson this year. And like the Knicks will go as far as Jalen Brunson potentially takes them. Mm-hmm. What's fascinating, year 5 in his career. And look, I'm sure you can understand this because you weren't taking for Zion, or your team wasn't taking for Zion in 2018-19. Mine was. So I had all these like aspirations for what year 5 might look like for Zion. And you actually got to see it play out. Now, the injury concerns being what they were, I never thought we'd be year 5 and he hasn't played a playoff game yet, you know? So I think that's, look, personally, as just an NBA fan, that's the thing I'm looking forward to is a healthy Zion for a playoff series and seeing, you know, what that potentially looks like. Even if it is just like a play-in game, if he has to go through the play-in to get there, you know, that would be something I'm fascinated to see. As far as this matchup is concerned against the Knicks, and this goes to the thing I threw on the rundown that I sent you about identity. So I know when we play the Pacers, it's run and gun, like transition opportunities left and right. The Knicks are going to have to either switch everything or try and keep with the pace. I know against the Heat, they're going to pull things out that you never saw against anybody else. Yeah. And it may result in some fisticuffs, as I saw against the Pelicans a few days ago, which on behalf of Knicks fans, welcome to the world of hating the Miami Heat and all of their players.
For decades.
Exactly. Yeah. So there are certain teams that I know have an identity when you play them and you can prepare for them. I just, full transparency, I have no idea what the Pelicans' identity is. And this is they're, again, 7th in net rating. They're a good basketball team. I still have no idea what to expect going into this game. So to the Knicks fan that is like me, that sees they're a good team, sees like we pay attention to the advanced metrics as well. Like I'm a fan of Herb Jones. I like Alvarado, Trey Murphy. I like Dyson Daniels. Yeah. I like what can Knicks fans expect from an identity standpoint? How will the Pelicans like match up against the Knicks on Tuesday night?
Well, welcome to the world of a New Orleans Pelicans observer, fan, Andrew.
I have no idea either. Okay,
it's because there's thoughts. I mean, you know, I'm sure you've heard enough about point Zion, you know, but then there's post Zion. There's there's a lot of elbow sets, you know, for Brandon Ingram. There's if CJ McCollum plays, you know, there's a different version of CJ McCollum that maybe Knicks fans or, you know, outsiders may not be used to, with him being just completely 3-point centric now, and you know, either 3-point shooting or, you know, layups at the rim, you know, or as he would call it, the Chris Paul area. He's kind of modified his game, you know, for fitting around Zion and Brandon. But yeah, I mean, you know, to answer your question though, night to night is, you know, it's kind of tough. I think now what they're at least trying to do is they're trying to get the ball in Zion's hands a lot more as a ball handler. They're trying to get him, you know, open, you know, in some early, whether it be dribble handoffs or, you know, pick and rolls all over the floor, screen set even around the paint area with Jonas Valanciunas. Certain matchups they will look to exploit, but I don't think with the Knicks that will be as prevalent, considering there's more traditional bigs that are set there. But yeah, man, I mean, the issue is when you talk about identity is that these guys, you know, the best guys on the team, when we're talking about the best 3 players, have not played a ton of basketball together. So they don't know 100% how to maximize themselves as a trio. They may end up having some really good games, but there's been so many games where the Pelicans have dominated as a team to where guys that you may not expect to have really, really good nights. Could be Najee Marshall this night. Could be Jose Alvarado. Maybe Larry Nance has a good night. Maybe Trey Murphy goes off. Herb Jones has been a constant. Maybe Jonas Valanciunas dominates. I mean, the list goes. Matt Ryan scored 14 points yesterday against the Bulls, and then you have Jordan Hawkins. So they in some of those games you'll look up and no one scores 20 and they win by 20. So I think at their heart, what they would like to do is that, they would, at their core, they would like to play with pace. They want the basketball in Brandon or Zion Williamson's hands to make final decisions as whether it be scorer or distributors. There's going to be a lot of when Zion gets the basketball trying to kick out the shooters. His assists have went completely up over the past month. Another game yesterday where I believe he had 11 assists. He had 9 assists. I believe the game prior, Brandon Ingram's a guy who can get you 6 or 7 assists. But that's the ultimate goal. They want their guys to get downhill. They're going to live in the paint. They're a good 3-point shooting team, but some nights they don't shoot enough of them. And now with certain guys being suspended, no Jose Alvarado, you're going to see more Jordan Hawkins. But sometimes you really don't know. You'll look up, and again, it's just someone who's having a game that you're not expecting. I think a really good defensive team. But offensively, for the Knicks, especially with Julius Randle out right now, look, Preston, you got to go get us 30. It's just, now there's guys that maybe Pelicans fans may not know 100% that they're playing at the level that they are playing at. DiVincenzo, for example, who's having a hell of a year. Of course, Pelicans know Josh Hart. But yeah. Of course, they know Josh Hart, but that's just the reality, man. I think they're trying their hardest to figure out a way where Brandon and Zion can play off of each other and use each other. You see it in certain spurts, but then they have moments where they just fall apart, lose focus, and turn the ball over for 4 or straight times in a row. I'm not making this up. 4 or 5 straight times in a row, lose rebounding battles, and then it's kind of they're in trouble. So, but ultimately, if we're talking about an identity, I think what they would like to do is get downhill, get to the paint, get teams in foul trouble offensively, and kick it out to shooters when need be. And in that fourth quarter, they want to take advantage of the fact of the abilities that they have in regards to getting to the rim, specifically Zion, where teams are tired, when teams are probably tired of fouling him, when teams are tired of contesting and crowding the paint, leading to him getting layups that he probably won't get in the first or second quarter. I mean, that's how I view it.
So it's interesting you say all that. First of all, let's just clarify who's suspended for this game, who's not playing. You said Alvarado. Anybody else not playing?
I think Najee Marshall was only suspended a game, so he'll be back. Dyson Daniels has been hurt. He tore his meniscus a couple weeks ago, so he won't be available.
He's out. Yeah.
Right. He's out. Zion Williamson is questionable, but there's no way he's not playing in New York.
At the Garden. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no way he's not playing. He'll keep.
Does that bother you how outwardly complimentary of MSG he is? Obviously, like we remember, I'm sure you remember the way I do, the draft, the lottery night video of him. Like being, just my opinion, he was disappointed that the Knicks weren't won. But,
look, Andrew, I live in the reality. I mean,
I'm just making sure. I didn't want to see it's disrespectful.
If you asked him, I don't know how he feels now, but if you asked him during the lottery where he wanted to play, and his options were the Atlanta Hawks, the New York Knicks, or the New Orleans Pelicans, I'd bet you the Pelicans were last on that list. It's just, there isn't, I mean, even when he was with Duke, I remember the question in the locker room about playing for the Knicks and him smiling. He loves playing in that place. He openly said it. Like, I think he said it's my favorite place, and he stopped himself for brand purposes. He said outside of New Orleans, of course.
Yeah, I remember.
Because it was the right thing to say. But it's okay. And he's had some really good performances in Madison Square Garden. So I don't that doesn't bother me at all, man.
Good. With that factored in, that he's questionable, but we'll answer the question for you. He's probably going to play in this game. The Knicks are a team that just they pride themselves on their rim protection. Like if they're going to do something they're going to take away something, it's going to be the paint. They crash the boards like crazy. Like they play this drop coverage. They've switched a little bit more recently, or tried to switch a little bit more recently. But that's why I think they're actually perfect for a team. They're perfect to stop, quote unquote, a Zion Williamson or a team that lives in the paint and tries to get to the rim. Now, no Mitchell Robinson, New Orleans native. Julius Randle's not really a rim protector, but he's just like a big body that you have to get through. I'll say Precious Achiuwa has been a revelation defensively that we just like didn't expect to happen when that was a throw-in in the Anunoby trade.
He's going to be a Zion matchup.
So you figure between him and Hartenstein, and then with Sims and Hart crashing the boards as well. If the Knicks can control the boards, I actually think I like their matchup in this game. It's the offensive side of the ball, because like Herb Jones, if they just want to go one-on-one and put him on Brunson, that's going to make his night hell. If they have the audacity to blitz Brunson and make somebody else beat you, I don't know who else is beating you. The Knicks do a lot of things to try and get Brunson open, but like we've seen teams succeed, like the Celtics in particular, just like have had a ton of success of like just making somebody else try to beat you, and nobody did. So I'd be curious. That's the thing that's giving me pause on having like full confidence in this game as a Knicks fan, is when I go through all the different rankings for the Pelicans or just throughout the league, I'm looking for what you're top 5 or 6 in, and being a top 6 defense is like, okay, Knicks will struggle to score in this game. So is that a fair, like that, before I go to my last question, is that a fair like fear to have, that like, okay, if this is 105 with 2 minutes left, I should be very afraid, because, well, maybe not afraid because the Knicks, I'll be confident with Brunson, but like a game in the 105s is what the Pelicans are going to try to play on Tuesday night.
Yeah. Unfortunately, just a team with the offensive talent that they have, that should not be a reality. I think a lot of this does also have to do with if CJ McCollum plays, who is questionable. I do expect him to play as well, but he is questionable. And here's the thing: what I'm curious about the most, and this is why I think the most important Knick player on this team tomorrow is going to be Bogdanovich. Because the Knicks, looking at them, I don't think they have a matchup for Brandon Ingram. I don't think they have. I think they have really good options, but not options with the height and the length that they would. Right. Maybe from a team defensive perspective that they could probably throw at them if OG Anunoby was healthy. It wouldn't even be a question. If OG was healthy, then
he's the skeleton key. If he's available, you throw him on anybody, and you're probably good. Yeah.
But without him, I think that's what's going to be interesting. Like certain teams, matchup wise, they have both. Certain teams have somebody that they can ideally throw, on Zion. I think in this case, it makes sense. You're going to bracket him. You're still going to you're going to have a bunch of people collapse in the paint. But I envision Precious being the one with the Zion matchup, and then you having Hartenstein being able to shade there at the rim, Jericho Sims. That's a decent blueprint for Zion. I would say most times. I don't know if it will be effective 100%, but I think, I kind of like that. I've also liked the way Hartenstein has played in matchups, even dating back to his Clippers days against Jonas Valanciunas. But the question for me, similar to what you asked about Jalen Brunson, is going to be who gets the Brandon Ingram matchup, and if you have enough from a height and a length perspective. Because I remember when Josh Hart was a Pelican, there would be games where the Pelicans just didn't have enough of the right wing defender. And this was before Herb Jones, where you look up and Josh Hart would be guarding LeBron James, and I say, oh no, I mean, Josh Hart's going to give you everything that he has there, but it's just. There's only so much he can do. He's not built to guard James Harden. He's not built to guard, a LeBron James
or a Tatum in the
or sense. A Tatum. Yeah, he's going to try. He's going up. He's a scrappy defender, but he isn't necessarily a lockdown. OG Anunoby, different story. And I think out of that, Andrew, how the Pelicans guard Brent Brunson is going to be interesting. Similar to what you mentioned about the Knicks, it's going to be a bunch of drop coverage. Jonas Valanciunas has gotten much better. He's playing the best defense that I've seen him play as a Pelican, specifically in space, which is going to be interesting. But I think Jalen Brunson is going to have a lot of opportunities. I don't know how much of a back-to-back will playing on a back-to-back will matter, will play in as, you're still in a dogfight kind of with the Detroit Pistons. That's going to be interesting.
That's why I'm hoping that at some point in the fourth quarter of the game that's happening right now, the Knicks pull away so Brunson doesn't have to play 40 minutes. And this isn't like you sweat it out with the Pistons and then you can get run off the court by the Pelicans,
Yeah, I mean, but I'll say this. I think, guys like Bogdanovich, Burks, who always kills. I feel like he always kills the Pelicans, no matter what team he's played on. He's played on the Jazz, plays on the Pistons. Like he always. So even dating back to his days with the first run with the Knicks, always seems to have good games. Bogdanovich too, when he was in Utah, would always give the Pelicans problems. I think those guys that are going to have opportunities. We know these role players play better at home. Those guys that are having chances to shoot, which could be some wide open threes that the Pelicans probably sell out to stop some of the things that Brunson wants to do, are going to be key. And then rebounding, Pelicans have lapses where they just don't rebound well. There isn't a guy they're only traditional big off the bench is Cody Zeller. And if you're throwing out Jericho Sims and you're throwing out, if they're not running small lineups, Larry Nance may struggle. And you got guys like Josh Hart who are great rebounders for their size. DiVincenzo, those 50-50 balls. It's what killed them against the Bulls, the other night and other games throughout. They haven't played well in the clutch to close games either. If the Knicks come out with the right energy and their role players are able to knock down shots, I'd be looking at this game and saying, okay, this might be a struggle for New Orleans tonight.
We'll see. It could be that in the margins like that, where Bogdanovich and Burks and a lot of the Knicks role players, as you mentioned, are just hitting shots, that this is a night that like the Knicks are hitting everything and they shot 45% from three. It's a recipe. It could also just be that the Knicks would have in my opinion, either the best or the 1A, Zion. I personally would take Brunson, but I'm understandably biased. But like the Pelicans have the next two best players. Like the Pelicans have Zion and Ingram, and we don't. So we could potentially it could boil down to that. Last thing before I let you get out of here, I hinted at the Mount Rushmore of rivals. I'm always asking, like I have the Heat I mentioned earlier. The Pacers stick out to me. There's the Boston, Philly, and now Toronto thing that I have to pay attention to because of the trade that the Knicks made. Who are the rivals? The four teams that you consider the Pelicans' biggest rivals from over the years throughout franchise history. I'm assuming the Hornets are on there because of the shared, you took their team and I don't know about took, but like the team moved to New Orleans. But
I got you.
In your opinion, who are the Mount Rushmore rivals for the Pelicans?
So, I was thinking about this when you sent this, and it's crazy. It's just a different in franchises, man. This isn't a team that has had very long, consistent runs with certain eras. They don't feel like they last long, and they haven't been consistent when it comes to winning. So it's really hard to create rivals if there isn't, high levels of, competition at play consistently. If you're winning one year, they're not winning the next, they're not winning again, they're not doing this. It's hard. A lot of the rivals that you end up mentioning, they all come from playoff basketball, right? You don't get Reggie Miller and the Pacers, against the Knicks and everything without a playoff basketball. We don't even talk about the Miami Heat if we're not, talking about Jeff Van Gundy being dragged.
On the morning's leg. Exactly.
Yeah, you don't get the Bulls and and all those things matter without the iconic playoff series. They kind of match with them. I think for New Orleans, there was a period of time where it felt I'm gonna do my best to pick some here. If I had to, it's kind of fan made, I
get it.
I think Memphis was one. Memphis is definitely one.
John Zion is there. Okay.
But then they're close in proximity.
Yeah.
They have a lot of similarities in regards to cities. And I think people were excited about how their teams were being built, both small markets. Like, when John Morant comes to New Orleans, it feels like he's at home. Like, it just, he has a lot of people in the city that love him. He spends a lot of time, in New Orleans, more than than I would expect. So that's a rivalry. It's not that far. It's not that long of a drive, from one A to 1B. So I would say that's one of the rivalries. One of the older rivalries, maybe the San Antonio Spurs, just was always something. Dating back to the Chris Paul days. That was the team that stopped the Pelicans from having their only Western Conference Finals appearance, Game 7. They ended up losing that to the Los Angeles Lakers. The
AD of it all. Yeah.
Everything involving Anthony Davis and that situation is always something when people are excited. New Orleans also for forever has had Laker fans. It's just a thing. So you might have a decent amount of Laker fans. Yeah,
at the Garden when the Knicks played the Lakers about a month ago. Yeah. It was like a sold out crowd, and the Knicks fans were loud. And then the last 3 minutes, you heard the Lakers fans, erupt suddenly.
Yeah. I think the Suns were on the way because of that playoff series, especially when they had Chris Paul. I think, and then last season, the Zion dunk. That's caused a little animosity, and players went back and forth. Booker comes back, drops 52 the next game, but that series, I think the Suns were close, and then now it's completely different with Kevin Durant. I would have liked it to be the Utah Jazz, but that never happened. I'm telling you, man, I can't think of when I have a rivalry of my own with the Sacramento Kings.
What's that about?
I just don't think that they're that good.
Oh, okay. So it's
I just don't think. Yeah, I just don't think that
it's a take rivalry. Gotcha.
Yeah, okay. I just don't think that they're that good. And it so happened that the Pelicans have beaten them, I believe, 4 times now this season. So that's a little rewarding. I think who will be the rivalry. I don't have a fourth team for you, but if I had to say who would, I'll do this for you. If I had to pick somebody who I think could/will be a rivalry, I think the Oklahoma City Thunder will be that team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think the Thunder will be that team.
Do you want to put the Miami Heat there as a placeholder because of the fight the other night? Until we get to the playoffs.
Andrew, it was crazy to me watching as many. All across my timeline was people circling the next date.
Mm-hmm. It's fun, ain't it? Can't wait till we go to South Beach.
It's I know now that they play March 22nd. There's no reason they're supposed to be circled in my brain now. But
Chris,
now,
Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
Well, so that's literally the point of this question is the dates you circle on the calendar before the season. And you officially they're a rival. I'm calling it. The Heat are officially. It may be a 2-game rivalry, because unless you two meet in the finals, which I'm not putting it past the Miami Heat to make the finals again.
You should not, yeah.
You never can. It's just as a Knicks fan that's been scorned by them too many times, you have to consider them. But
yeah,
if you want to share my animosity or temporarily feel the same animosity for the Heat, it's fun when to hate against them, even though sometimes they end up beating you anyway.
Because the Heat beat you guys last year.
Beat us in the playoffs. Yeah. What's annoying is that I've talked to a couple of people. The Knicks just played the Celtics, and when I did a pregame pod for the Celtics, who are you afraid of? I'm not ruling out the Heat because they'll show up, be less talented than you, and you'll be looking up. It's how'd we lose this series? You'll win 57 games with Giannis, and I'll talk to a Bucks guy and be like, yeah. And then suddenly our coach is fired and our season's over. That's just how. That you'll just look up and suddenly they're winning. So, I'm glad. Enjoy the hating the Heat, though. That is a fun thing to do,
I will say this, Andrew. I'm as we wrap up, I'm glad you hit me up because who was it? Bob Myers, ironically compared the Knicks. He said they're the Pelicans
and
of the
Pelicans,
East.
Yeah.
I don't get to hear shit like that very often. I don't get to hear the Pelicans of anything that that isn't next to something terrible. So to hear that a team in New York, and then shortly after that you get fun with Stephen A. Smith. So yeah, man, awesome.
It's funny that you took that as oh wow, we're the Knicks of the West, and we were we're the Pelicans of the East. It's a complete different reaction to the comment. Chris, this was fun. I'm glad we got to link up for this. Before we wrap up, please let the fine folks at home know where they can find you and all of your stuff. Please,
my name across pretty much every social media is Impatient Bull. You can follow everything that we're doing at Boo Crew Media. I also want to say this: while I do have Pelican Spaces in my name, and I was trying, and it's gonna happen. I'm gonna get Stephen A. Smith on a space. Yeah. I was able to get
there's
Kendrick
like a
Perkins.
rivalry with the Pelicans and Stephen A right now, right? Like their social media has been taking him behind the woodshed lately.
And he came out and gave the Pelicans 10 minutes. He gave the Pelicans 10 minutes of a response on his show today. So, shout out to that. But while, I do have spaces in my bio, and I do want to give credit, and love to Rocky, Charles, and Faloran, who pretty much have taken over the the game to game recap of the spaces. So if you're checking in, you'll see me in there every now and then, but they are the ones that are keeping us alive these days. I just try to, if I can get a big time player, a big time guest like Stephen A, like such and such, that's when I kind of chime in again. But you can follow everything that we're doing with Boot Crew Media, post game live shows, in person shows, private individual content, all those things. And yeah, man, appreciate you for having me on again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris, for joining me. And everybody, thank you for tuning in to this edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show. We do this before every game, like to get a look at the other team from the other fan base's perspective. If you enjoyed it, please give us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes if you're listening. If you watched it, please like the video. Remember to subscribe. I will be back on Thursday morning before the Knicks take on the Golden State Warriors. But until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the game tonight, and I will speak with you soon.